The Ferrari sat silent on the shoulder of the mountain road like a wounded animal, its red paint catching the last light of a dying afternoon, and beside it stood a man who had everything money could buy except the one thing he needed in that moment. His phone had no signal, the road was empty, the sky was turning the color of bruised steel, and for the first time in years, fear pressed against his chest instead of confidence. That was when a small voice, barely louder than the wind, drifted from behind him, carrying a belief so simple it almost hurt to hear. The little girl, with dusty shoes and hopeful eyes, looked at the broken supercar and at the shaken millionaire, and in a whisper filled with absolute certainty, she believed that her dad could fix it. Before the story continues, take a moment right now. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of ordinary people changing lives, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them. The man's name was Adrian Vale, a self-made millionaire whose face often appeared on magazine covers under words like visionary and relentless. He had built an empire from nothing, or at least that was the version the world loved to hear. What the world never printed was how alone success had left him, how every mile he climbed distanced him from people until relationships felt like transactions and trust felt like a liability. This drive through the mountains had been meant as an escape, a rare attempt to feel something other than pressure and numbers. The Ferrari was a symbol of freedom until it wasn't, until a mechanical failure reduced all that wealth to a useless shell of metal on an empty road. The little girl had appeared as if the mountains themselves had sent her. She was no more than 7 or 8, her hair tied loosely, her jacket too thin for the cooling air. She had been collecting wildflowers along the roadside, waiting for her father to finish his work nearby. Her world was small, defined by trust and routine, and in that world, broken things were not endings. Broken things were problems her father solved with patience, grease-stained hands, and quiet focus. To her, the silent Ferrari was no different from the old tractor or the neighbor's truck. It simply needed fixing. Adrian watched her with confusion and something close to disbelief. His entire life had been built on complexity, on teams of experts and layers of control. Yet here was a child offering a solution as if it were the most natural thing in the world. He followed her gaze down the road to a modest workshop half hidden by pine trees. The building leaned slightly, its paint faded, its sign weathered by decades of wind and snow. It looked like the kind of place time had forgotten, the opposite of the sleek, glass-filled world Adrian ruled. Still, with no other options and the cold creeping deeper into his bones, he followed. The workshop belonged to a man named Daniel Harper, a mechanic who had never left the mountains he was born in. Life had tested him early. His wife had died years ago after a brief illness, leaving him with a young daughter and a grief that settled into his bones like winter. He had learned to survive by fixing what others gave up on, engines that no one else wanted to touch, and eventually pieces of himself. His hands were strong but scarred, his face lined not by age alone but by endurance. He earned just enough to keep the lights on and food on the table, and more importantly, to keep his daughter believing the world was still safe. When Adrian stepped into the workshop, the smell of oil and metal hit him harder than the cold ever could. It was a smell he hadn't known since childhood, before ambition had pulled him far away from such places. Daniel listened carefully as Adrian explained the problem, his tone polite but guarded, the way wealthy. Men often speak when they expect incompetence. Daniel did not react to the Ferrari with awe or fear. To him it was just another machine, complex but honest. Machines, unlike people, always told the truth if you knew how to listen. The hours that followed blurred together. Night fell fully, wrapping the mountains in silence broken only by tools clinking and the low hum of effort. Adrian waited, first impatiently, then restlessly, and finally quietly. He watched Daniel work with a concentration that seemed almost meditative, his movements steady, unhurried, respectful of the machine. The little girl sat nearby, drawing shapes on scrap paper, completely certain everything would be fine. That certainty unsettled Adrian more than the breakdown itself. As time passed, something shifted. Adrian found himself talking, not about business or markets, but about the weight of always needing to succeed, the fear of being irrelevant, the exhaustion of never stopping. Daniel listened without judgment, offering no grand advice, only understanding nods. He spoke of his wife, of learning to cook poorly at first, of learning to braid hair, of nights spent fixing engines because motion kept grief at bay. Two men from different worlds stood connected by something neither had expected: shared struggle. By the time the engine roared back to life, it was well past midnight. The sound echoed through the trees like a heartbeat returning. Adrian felt relief, but beneath it something deeper stirred. Gratitude, yes, but also humility. He offered Daniel a payment that could have covered months of work, a sum meant to end the interaction cleanly. Daniel accepted only what was fair, what the repair was worth. Pride was not the right word for it. It was integrity. Adrian drove away that night, but the mountains did not release him easily. The image of the small workshop, the calm competence, the unwavering belief of a child followed him back to his world of glass towers and polished floors. He returned to meetings and numbers, but something felt wrong. Success tasted hollow when compared to the quiet dignity he had witnessed. For the first time in years, he questioned whether building higher was the same as building better. Weeks passed, and Adrian made a decision that shocked his board and baffled his advisors. He began funding vocational programs, not as charity for headlines, but as investments in people like Daniel. He returned to the mountains, not with cameras, but with respect. He offered Daniel resources to expand the workshop, to train young mechanics who had nowhere else to go. Daniel hesitated, wary of promises from wealthy men, but his daughter's future mattered more than pride. Together, they built something new without destroying what made it honest. The workshop became a place of second chances. Broken machines, broken people, all treated with patience and skill. Adrian visited often, learning more there than he ever had in boardrooms. He learned that leadership could be quiet, that worth was not measured in net worth, and that sometimes the smallest voices carried the greatest truths. The little girl grew, still believing her dad could fix anything, and perhaps she was right in more ways than one. As the years went on, Adrian's empire changed shape. Profit still came, but so did purpose. He was no longer chasing escape in fast cars on empty roads. He was building bridges between worlds that rarely spoke, and every time he heard an engine come back to life, he remembered the night he was stranded, powerless, until a child's faith rewrote the moment. If this story is touching your heart right now, please take a second to comment below and share what it made you feel. Your words mean more than you know. Near the end of that mountain road, long after the Ferrari had driven away and long after the world had moved on, one truth remained steady. Kindness does not need wealth to be powerful. Belief does not need logic to be strong. Sometimes, all it takes to change a life is a whisper filled with faith, and someone willing to listen. If this story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you of the goodness still alive in ordinary people, please like this video, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement helps keep these stories alive, reaching hearts that need hope, just like Adrian did on that cold mountain night.